Dr. Katsui,
Hey,
I thought I'd play some music to introduce you.
Keith Jarrett is my favorite.
A little birdie told me that, so I thought I would. It's very, very pretty there. How did you learn about Keith Jarrett?
Oh, I've been a big music fan for quite a while, and sorry, and through exploring different music and came across his stuff a few years ago, and been a fan. I think I really enjoy the process he does and his
Uh huh.
technique. So I think that's part of the mystique of him, or you know, he's somebody who I appreciate as a very talented and a very exacting musician. And then I'm really impressed with his attitude towards music, right? Of this idea of live recordings of his pieces, and how he is able to produce these things in his mind and then translate it to a live audience. I just think it's an amazing way of doing music.
Yeah, very nice. I read about your interest in collecting some of his vinyls, and I started listening to it, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a wonderful story about him and his most famous record, the Cologne concert, on how he almost walked away from that concert because the piano that he had ordered was not delivered, and he was given a out of tune, small, broken piano,
Oh, wow.
and in the huge concert hall. So you need a grand piano. I think he wanted something like a Bosendorfer Imperial, and he got like a Bosendorfer, but like the baby version of that. So that thing doesn't make enough sound to hit like the fill up a concert hall. But he just had to play it in a different way, and that ability to interact with something unexpected and to be flexible was something that I always admired from Keith Jarrett.
Well, I'll have to listen to it more. I gotta say, it was very nice as I was doing some work to have some of the background music, and it was very light, very upbeat, and so I'm gonna have to check him out. We're talking to Dr. Katsui Nishikawa Chavez from Trinity University. Welcome to the World Affairs Council Instagram Live. Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
There are a lot of questions. I find the area of that you study very interesting personally, and of course, because of the work that I do as well with the World Affairs Council. But before we do that, you are a product of Purdue University, and there are some well-known Purdue University alumni in addition to you. I know as a Bruin, I know that John Wooden the Wizard was he went to Purdue as well, and Neil Armstrong and many others, and yourself. What made you pick Purdue?
Uh, I want to say that it was its reputation and its standing, but you know what? I was an international student at the time, and so I was. I'm originally from Mexico, and I grew up in Baja California on the west coast of Mexico, and I did my undergrad in Monterrey, and I had a professor who was American who encouraged me to think about grad school, and it was something that I wanted to do, and it took me a little bit of about 6 years to figure out how to go from Mexico to do a grad program in the U.S. And back then, when in the mid 90s, there wasn't a lot of like stuff online, and so I ordered a book. I think it's by the same company that does TOEFL, or and they had put up stats on I think now you can find these things online, but it was like this tome of all the grad programs in the US in social science and how much funding was available. So I knew I needed money. And so I looked at the schools that funded the most, that had good programs. And that's how I created my list, because I knew that the most important thing was for me to get funding and to be able to come to the US to study. And luckily, Purdue and I found a great professor that I wanted to work with, somebody who specialized in the field that I'm interested in. And so I was incredibly lucky to fall into this opportunity. And so when it came, I took it, and that's, that brought me to the U.S. And then from the U.S., I got an opportunity to come to Trinity as a visiting professor, and that turned into a permanent position. And so I'm the kind of person who's been very fortunate and been at the right time, in the right place, and things have just happened for me. That's how that's kind of like the loop that brought me here. And I have to recognize the great amount of fortune, right? So it's a lot of it is hard work, of course, but without the luckiness in it, a lot of it, I guess, would not have happened.
And someone who kind of guided you and mentored you, right? I mean, having a professor like that, has that motivated you to pay it forward with some of your students in a way, proactively?
Yeah, I think his name is Dr. Thomas Hopkins. He's a professor. I think he teaches now in China. He's an American professor who he just wanted to teach in around the world. He didn't want to be in the U.S., right? He's a person with really strong attitudes, and he thinks about globalization and all these things, and it was very inspiring to me as a young person to come across somebody with so much passion for his work, and then to be said, like, you have something, you should maybe look into this, and that set me on a path to try to get to grad school. And life takes you into different directions. I worked when I graduated, I did a little bit of entrepreneurship. Two cousins and I started a lobster exporting company, and
Wow.
that didn't go so well, but it was an amazing experience. I learned to negotiate with people from different countries, and to understand the behavior of approaches to business. And after that, I got into education, but it was a great experience for me to kind of work in the field of live lobster exports.
See, that information was not in your bio, the lobster part. Wow. Well, so walk us through a little bit. You come to Trinity and you are teaching political science. And where does the Center for International Engagement? It wasn't the first. It wasn't the reason you came to Trinity, but you started out as an associate professor in poli-sci, focusing on Mexico
and Latin
and
America.
immigration. Yeah. So tell us about your transition into Center for International Engagement, and actually what is the CIE at Trinity University?
Yeah, great question. So back in 2010, 2011, the Trinity is starting to review its strategic plan, and within it, there's this great need for developing a coherent internationalization approach. Trinity has always done great with internationalization. We have had some major, very engaged faculty who have done a lot of work to create the base from where we started. The faculty from Trinity, like Dr. Jorge Gonzalez and Arturo Madrid, they started the Mexico, the Americas, and Spain program, and that got a lot of traction. And then on focusing on East Asia, Dr. Stephen Field and Don Clark did a lot to start the work that we did with East Asia. So we had a good, solid footprint overseas, and we worked with Tec de Monterrey. We had programs that took students to Europe, to Spain. Dr. Dick Burr was also one of the pioneers in this area, and especially in the idea of experiential learning abroad. And so with they had done so much, right? So for Trinity, it was a no-brainer to put this together as a center. And I had just gone up for tenure, and I remember talking to some colleagues and saying how I thought I would be good for this job. You know, like this job would be a good fit for me. So you can tell by my name that I'm part Japanese and part Mexican, and I grew up in Mexico and have lived in the States. And I do have like I feel a background that's never been really tied to one single country, but has been a very itinerant kind of life. And so I thought that that everything international to me has been very rewarding. So now being able to be a part of the center that was being formed would be a wonderful second chapter to my experience at Trinity. And what I found was that that there was so much energy and goodwill and great ideas, that putting things together was the challenging was what to choose amongst all the things that we could do to start with, right? So kind of putting the ducks in the row and prioritizing things as to what would be the best thing to start with was one of the things that challenged us the most.
And full disclosure, I actually sit on the advisory board for the CIE. I also, and you're talking about the hard part was trying to focus in on I think that comes across, when you were the first moderator for when we transitioned over from COVID, from in-person to digital because of COVID, and you did our first webinar on democracy, and you did it with some of our friends at UTSA and Trinity actually. And one word I would describe is I could also sense the passion you have about international issues. And I overheard a podcast you did about the classes you teach, and about a little bit more focused about the U.S.-Mexico relations and democratic institutions. And there's a passion, and I think that permeates with what as well as your interest level. By the way, we have some people joining us who are giving you some shout outs here. We also have someone we interviewed who's tuning in from Ghana.
Oh, wow. He's
a young man from Ghana, Samuel. He's tuned in. And I know a friend of mine from Warsaw is also tuning in. So, and Magdalena is also tuning in. We've got several people to run through there, but you're also getting some love on there.
I saw Chrissy from Tokyo, Japan, also logged in, a former student of ours. And so, hi, Chrissy. Shout out from San Antonio.
And she's in Korea right now.
In Tokyo, actually.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, why don't you expand on that? Because I know when COVID hit, and you were talking in that piece about the transition you had to make. Actually, I think it was an article you'd written. You had over 130 students who were here, who you had over 52 countries represented, and then you had to figure out what in the world are we going to do? So walk us through, because it seems easy when you read it, but there are a lot of logistics to follow.
Yeah. Wow. So another experience I had after the lobster business was working for Panasonic and their supply chain management. And so I learned a lot about how to put everything in order and how to think about things in a logistical way. And that really helped me, I think, thinking about the crisis and about lead times that we had to think about how to get our students who were abroad back to the US safe, and how we got our students here in the US back to their home country safe. And so our mission has student health and safety at its core, right? We do believe in the ability and the transformative nature of international study, and to go to the places where you should be, to observe the phenomena. And but everything, we always have to hedge our risks, right? So having a staff that's well trained and well honed and thinks about safety first was critical. So the staff were already thinking about this. They I think the one thing that saved us to not get bogged down in the things was to act quickly and act early. And I have to attribute a lot of this to the staff I worked with. They were monitoring things. They were, we had kind of like a control center. We were glued to the TV, and we knew the number of cases, and we knew that at certain points we needed to take our students out. So we started with China, and that was a great experience. Well, not a great experience, but it was a very powerful experience for us in the sense that it taught us about working fast and being proactive. We were fortunate to see this coming and act. And so we pull our students maybe 72 hours before the rest of the universities did. So our students did not have to bother with have the same problems in finding flights and getting to the airport and getting back home, and avoiding any type of quarantines and issues. So when Italy started happening, then we knew that we had to start looking at not only Italy, but all our students abroad everywhere. And having that mindset of safety helped us get our students back home. And it was really driven a lot by the expertise of our staff that knew how to do this and worked. It was almost out of a movie, like the idea of everybody in one room with, like 9 laptops open and, food being delivered, nobody going home until we got all our students back. And that was really rewarding to see our students be able to return, and that we got everybody safe home. And it was a really nice feeling for us.
Let's dive in a little bit more. I know you are very interested and also passionate about youth and involvement in the international arena and understanding cultures. And what do you think your mixed background has something to do with that, or do you think you just have innate curiosity, or do you think it's necessary nowadays to be able to empathize with different cultures and societies?
Yeah, right. Like, we were just, before we started, we were talking a little bit about music, and we're talking about Keith Jarrett, right? And so Keith is a person who spans musical genres, right? It's hard to, he's, you can find him under jazz, but under classic, under contemporary, that he wears many hats. And like the idea of the construction of music, being able to see it from all these angles, for me, is something that I think I like to think that's an approach that we should think about. So the idea of creativity, problem solving, thinking outside of the convention, there's something about the international experience, about learning how other people look at a problem. And so when you're faced with an issue, when you're faced with a dilemma, when you need a new solution, if you only have one cultural frame to look at it through, you're inherently limiting yourself. So my argument to my students is that you have to learn how other people see problems, because that ability to see the problem from another perspective is something that, and you have that ability to empathize and to switch perspectives and put the view of somebody else's and look at a problem inherently gives you other options that you can't see, right? So our cultural frames, like it or not, bias gives us a bias in the way we think about things, right? It railroads us into certain ways of thinking. So that mental flexibility that you get by being an international person, I think contributes this other idea. And I think we see it in the US. You know, for me, one of the biggest driving forces of why the US is such an important country is that because it has all this immigration coming into it. And I'm not surprised to hear that, you know, that like the people from Elon Musk or, you know, Steve Jobs or even the guy from Amazon, right? That they have immigration in either their parents or they are immigrants themselves, right? They have that experience of having a different perspective on things, and I think that has helped those innovators to kind of be able to succeed in the way that they've had. And so when I talk to students and I try to motivate them about the international part and why they should add more international experiences into their own education, it's because I want to encourage them to be flexible this way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think opening it even further and diving into more, do you think having an international experience could also enlighten or help with some of the more local issues and conflicts we have in the States, like race, like some of the political differences there are? Do you think that has some direct link?
Yeah, I'm trained as a comparativist political scientist, right? So that means that what we try to do is look at an issue, for example, healthcare, right? So what's the most efficient way for a government to organize healthcare? And by looking at other countries, it's basically mini labs, right? Mini case studies. And by comparing each country to the other, we can kind of ascertain what are the patterns of successful countries, what are successful countries doing, and what are the countries that are missing or spending more for their healthcare, what are the things that they're doing. And so we can take these experiences, right, the good experiences and the bad experience from other countries and adopt it to us. You know, the U.S. is an exceptional country, but at the same time, it is a country, right? It's a system that governs people and tries to help them with their decisions and, you know, create cohesion and prosperity, et cetera, et cetera. And so the lessons from other countries, we should not trip on the same rock that another country tripped on, right? We should be able to see that that's a wrong approach and avoid it at all costs possible. And so there's lots to learn. I think it takes a little bit of humility. And, you know, well, the U.S. is a very powerful country, and for us, humility is maybe something difficult. But humility is a principle that opens us up as individuals, as a country, to understanding the world that we live in and understanding other people.
You know, you bring up a very interesting comparison I hadn't thought of, but the book called Built to Last looks at companies in the U.S. who have withstood everything, and it actually does an academic and everything from their value statements to their CEOs to how they practice self-development and leadership development. And it's a very comprehensive guide of companies like Goodyear and Citi and JP Morgan. So that sounds like, I mean, a light bulb went on. What great way to have something in your hands to look at that comparison. Okay, what are certain regions doing in order to maybe not eliminate, but to heighten their experience and knowledge about some of the societal issues? I think that's so. There are there is textbook or academia revolving around that study?
Yeah, the field of public policy dives into this area with greater intensity, right? So within
Hmm.
political science, if anybody's interested in this, public policy, public administration, and comparative on a comparative scale does do a lot of it. So people who work with issue-based policies, say race relations, governance structures for multi-ethnic governments, um, even how would you run what's the best way to run an election, right? Like how do you transform the will of the people into actual seats? And what we see is that countries experiment and they're very willing to adopt good practices from other countries, similar to what we see in the private sector, right? What you're saying is that the private sector is learning from each other. They are copying and emulating the good practices of other corporations. They have a profit. It's a responsibility towards their shareholders, right? So our government should feel that same responsibility towards its citizens and should be able to maybe think outside the box and be able to adapt practices that have been proven effective in other countries, right? Or even ourselves take a little bit of a leap and experiment in how we do things. Being too rigid and being too stuck to tradition, you might find that corporations that do that don't survive as well as those corporations that you mentioned in the Build to Last book. There's something very interesting about those corporations, and there's that. I think for me, the takeaway is that flexibility, the ability to
Hmm.
confront a problem at certain points in their existence and be flexible and adapt and to the changing environment around them.
Very interesting. We have maybe about 5 minutes left. I want to kind of go back to the Center for International Engagement. What sort of things do you need from the community? Um is there anything the community can do, can be participate in, or if there's anything that you need other than trying to meet people in person and travel and whatnot? Um, I don't think a lot of people in San Antonio know about this. Is there a place for people to support the CIE?
Yeah, so we need support like any other organization, expertise, and we know that there's the the more we ask, the more experts that we find here on in town, right? So there's this challenge of COVID for us as people who teach in the international field is an opportunity for us to kind of shift gears, right? So going back to Jared, Keith Jarrett's music, right? So he's in this moment where he's presented with a piano that doesn't work, and he says, "Oh, I'll just do what I can with this," and it forces him to improvise and to go outside of his normal kind of pattern of behavior, and he produces the highest selling piano jazz album in worldwide, right? And so I think about that when I think about the time that we have now. And so we can't go abroad. We can't take our students abroad to show them what the world is like. So we have to do it here now. And that's a great opportunity, right? That constraint now forces us to think in innovative and interesting ways. So for example, one of the things that we've done is to create a new program based on what we hear from our students, right? Our students, we're so lucky, right? They want to change the world. A lot of students coming out of high school, they have a greater sense of the world and and their place in it. And so I'm surprised. We asked students, how do you want to serve your community and the world? And they have answers for these, right? And they say, I want to do this. I want to work in this field. And a lot of the fields that they want to work is going away from the for-profit area and work in the non-for-profit area. They want to produce value for their community in creating non-for-profit organizations. So we thought, okay, you know, like we have a lot of students who want to do this. So we created a non-for-profit class that's going to build a non-for-profit, and we're going to work with San Antonio communities to create solutions for them, right? And what we want is for students to learn how to work with communities, to learn how to to put the priority on what the community wants, and to build an organization that's effective at dealing with this issue. And so we want them to be able to graduate and be able to knock on the door of that company or that NPO or that organization that they feel passionate to work with, and immediately be able to say, I know how to do this because I've done it before, right? I had this experiential learning opportunity when we were during COVID, and we worked and we created this non-for-profit, and I know how to do the taxes. I know how to do how to write grants. I know how to work with community members. You know, that I think would be something that enriches our students, and it helps them think about how all these global problems are also local problems. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to see this, you know, we also have the problem of climate change. We also have here the problem of water resources and all sorts of human issues, right? Like human trafficking, poverty, lack of resources and education. And these same problems are replicated globally. So we have an opportunity to serve our own community and to learn to be able to serve the global community. So I'm really excited about what the things that are happening here at Trinity. And even though it's not the best time to be an international educator, I think that, like Keith Jarrett, we're gonna just have to go at it.
Well, you know, I
Figure it
think
out.
on that note, we will have him playing in the background.
Yeah, play
I
a
don't know if you
song.
can hear it. Can you
Yeah,
hear it? So, Dr.
yeah.
Katsuo Nishikawa Chavez, he's with Trinity University. He is the director of the Center for International Engagement. Just Google that. His email's there if you have any follow-up questions. Um, okay, now I can't hear myself talk. Sorry. He's, and, you know, just talking to you, I came up in my mind some other programming that I think you would be great in to be part of. And so I'll have to talk to you offline about that, just because it's. I wish we had more time to talk about it. I think we'll have to continue it later, but to delve into some of the political communications and campaigns that you've covered, and some also about U.S.-Mexico relations. So we want to thank Dr. Ketsui and Trinity University for your time, and for also taking part with the World Affairs Council. Please Google him if you want to talk to him, or send me a private message, and I'll be sure to put you in touch with them. Thank you so much for always willing to step up to the plate and volunteer, and also to advocate on behalf of the students and international policy.
Thank you for this opportunity. I welcome any emails and start a conversation. I'm very happy. I learned so much for the people in our community. And so if you're thinking, what am I going to tell somebody with a PhD? Take that out of your head. I've learned so much from just engaging with people with experience. I think that there's so much to learn here. So please, direct message me. I'm happy to have a conversation.
Very good. Dr. Ketsui, thank you so much. You'll
Thank
be
you.
seeing him more. You guys,
Yeah.
everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.